So I wrote this book, and it's sort of about communications in the church and in individual churches at the parish level. It's sort of about my theory as to why young people fall away from the church. People fall away from the church every day. It's really sad. It happens quietly, and I have a theory as to why that happens. And I think there's mainly like two groups of people. The first group are people who, just for whatever reason, aren't being spiritually fed. They, have acute 21st century problems, and they don't see them being called out and addressed in the Catholic Church. And so it's very easy to go find a non-denominational Christian church that will talk about these issues and openly and support groups of people that are struggling together and form these communities. And so not only that, but, I think a lot of people have been to these services where it's a half an hour of music, rock music, cool, somebody's playing in a fish tank. And then you have about a half an hour of a motivational speech. It's like a sermon, there's scripture, and it definitely feels good. They're super entertaining. I like them. The other group of people are the ones who kind of gave up on the spiritual life really young. For whatever reason, they had a trauma when they were, 5, 7 years old, 10 or 12 years old. Definitely by the time they were 18, they had a trauma, and they never really connected the Catholic faith with seeking out spiritual answers to serve as a palliative for the suffering that had become their life. And my theory is that they really weren't shown real life role models of people who had a mature spirituality and people who had endured the slings and arrows of life and used their Catholic faith to make meaning out of their existence. And it's a shame because the fact of the matter is they're everywhere, especially in our churches. There are courageous, unbelievable Catholics who are living out their faith and being observant and being, pious and have endured untold amounts of hardship in their life. And so when young people undergo a trauma, what do they think? They think, well, let me go see a therapist. Let me go, turn to an addiction, drugs and alcohol, sex, gambling, pornography, pick your poison, or let me go to, if that gets out of hand, they go to 12-step programs. They go to all these other places that our culture has basically co-signed as the default place to go to deal with these problems. And I think at the root of most of these problems, there is a spiritual sickness, whether it is the deadly sins run riot, the lack of love in their life, and if the problem is coming from their family and their family are practicing Catholics, the last place they want to go is the Catholic Church. And so they leave, and it makes sense for them to leave, and they never think twice, and they never look back. But the fact of the matter is, if you worked in or around a Catholic Church, you know that there are tons of people who have amazing stories of spiritual triumph and of courage in the face of adversity by using, the template of their Catholic faith and the people and the teaching and the prayer life and everything that is good about being Catholic can be used to solve these spiritual problems. And so this book explains in detail how to tell these stories because I think as Catholics, we sort of jump a little bit far ahead and we think that as long as somebody knows the scripture, as long as somebody knows the spiritual teachings of Jesus, as long as somebody knows what is exactly meant by the catechism, then they will have enough knowledge to rationalize staying in the Catholic Church. And that's just not the case. 80% of Catholics don't read the Bible at all. But one thing people do connect with are the stories of other people that they can see sitting next to them in the pew. And, with social media and the factors of production for video and audio and the egalitarian nature of distribution, we have access to the resources to produce, media that is impactful and produce stories that can be distributed in a tactful way that can inspire people and show people that the Catholic faith is the answer to your spiritual problems. And so I think if you want to connect with millennials and Gen Z, people under the age of, let's say, 40, you have to reach them where they are. And unfortunately, they're on their phones and they're, using social media, they're listening to podcasts, they're watching YouTube. Let's reach them where they are and show them the heroic people and stories that have taken place in the lives of your parishioners. Because if somebody who's suffering from, let's say one of their friends died in an accident, or their friend died of an overdose, or let's say they are suffering from, a very serious addiction. If they can connect with somebody in your church, rather than being told to, pray and read the Bible, the likelihood of them sticking around when times get tough in their, late teens, early 20s, because things always get tough, no one has it easy, are much higher. The likelihood of them relying on their faith and relying in the spiritual solutions that Christ gave us are much higher. And so I think if you want to connect people and reach young people and communicate in a way that is reflective of the technology of the 21st century, read this book and implement the ideas, and follow me and sign up for my newsletter. And I'm going to try to educate you over the next X number of years to build a skill set to do this type of work. And it's not a huge learning curve, but you will have to learn new stuff. You might have to hire somebody part-time, but it's worth it, because I don't want to look back in 50 years and see that we had the opportunity to change the way we communicate and really connect with people, and we didn't take it because the other churches are doing it. The competition is stiff. And so I believe in the Catholic Church. I think we have everything you would need to lead a spiritual and meaningful life. So I think we should be telling the stories that prove the efficacy of the faith. And I believe in it. I believe in these ideas. And I'm not a theologian. I'm literally a designer and a marketer. I went to Catholic school as a kid, and maybe that was a problem because my spiritual formation basically stopped when I was 13 years old. And so, it should never stop. And the fact of the matter is when we tell the stories of these spiritual heroes that are sitting in the pews next to us in church, we're testifying to young people that the spiritual journey is never over. There's no end. You always need to grow. You always need to grow closer to Christ, and your ability to do so is the linchpin as to, the level of peace and tranquility and meaning that you have in your life. So I believe in these ideas, and I'm open to answer any questions. You can contact me through the site, and I'd like to help you on your journey.